think it's really important, regardless of the size of your organization, to do this. I think when you're on a really small team, sometimes you can forget to acknowledge, all the work that's going on behind the scenes. And then when you have maybe a large team or a large organization, there are so many different pockets in the organization that someone in the marketing team has no idea what someone over in HR or operations might be up to. But then if they get to see that recognition in one of those weekly meetings, it helps make connections. It helps people appreciate the work that everybody is putting in. Talking about showing appreciation in the workplace, and there are a lot of ways to do this. Today, we're just going to highlight 3 of our favorites, but be sure to keep an eye out for part 2. We will highlight 3 additional ways that we can show appreciation. So our hope is something on this list is going to stick out and encourage you to take an idea, tweak it a little, make it what works best for you and your team, and go from there. So, all right, Eric, I know you're really passionate about creating a culture where people are genuinely celebrated. So what's the first example on our list today for showing appreciation?
We're going to keep all this stuff fairly straightforward, but this first one is as easy as this gets because it just involves speaking, a little bit of words. It's something that really I learned about almost the value of this by accident. So the first thing is going to come out of my first business. It's a brand agency called Focus Lab. And this is a practice that we started because we knew that recognition and appreciation was it felt good to us, but we did not know that there was actually a way to measure the impact over time. We just had a hunch that it would be another way to make work better for everyone. So what it involves is very straightforward. In our all hands meetings, which are weekly, we intentionally make space to do something that we've grown to call sharing wins and high fives. Wins and high fives are probably self-explanatory, but just as a couple of examples, if I do something in a project or in my own work where nobody else would have seen it or heard about it, but it was something that I was proud of, a win, then we are trying to create space for people to have a chance to share that with their peers and say, hey, I want to share something that I'm kind of proud of, something that happened that I did. That's just an opportunity to celebrate yourself in a sense. That's a small piece of this wins and high fives practice. A bigger part, though, is the intentionality behind somebody looking to a peer or a manager or a direct report and just giving them a public high five, giving them some kudos for something that they did. For us, it often involves a client project we've been working on, or maybe it's a process that we've been trying to improve or experiment with. And we'll just take a minute to say, hey, I want to give Laura Sue a high five. She and I were working on something this week, and she came up with 3 or 4 creative ideas that I would have never thought about. And I just was reminded how awesome it is to be able to work with her. And you do this in public, basically. You do this with your peers, your coworkers around you. And it's something that it just takes a little bit of planning ahead. Now, with Focus Lab, when we started this, we didn't know that there was again, measurable impact to this, but really what we've learned in the time since is that it's not just a feel-good activity. It actually can affect how people feel about their work, about their teammates. It can change the behavior and be better for them, for their teammates, and also for customers. And it's just using words. It's just saying some things out loud in a public setting. And it was one thing to start it, to put it in the agenda. It's one thing to kind of say, all right, part of our meeting is wins and high fives. However, it's a totally different thing for us to actually roll it out and it be adopted by everyone. So one thing I want to just make clear as I share this kind of idea with everyone here is the leaders need to lead the way in showing what it looks like to share these high fives, taking the time, putting in the intention to call out not just a generic, hey, Laura Sue, high five for great work this week. No, that's too generic. You need to be specific. You need to use names. And that way it is so much more genuine. You can understand the value to whatever this high five is about. And people feel that differently than a generic kind of, hey, good job last week type comment. So this is something that I like to think of as maybe you've heard of 360-degree feedback. For me, this is like 360-degree appreciation. It's something that I'm going to appreciate people side to side of me in an org chart. I'm going to appreciate upwards towards my managers and leaders, downwards, if you will, if you have somebody who direct reports. It's an all encompassing approach to sharing appreciation. And bonus points if your organization has really genuine and rich core values that you can tie these high fives to. Mm-hmm. That's an even more kind of meaningful way to reinforce certain habits and behaviors across the organization. So, I mean, imagine just if you're a business owner or a leader, just imagine that you can just use some words to affect and impact your retention rates. Like that's one of the examples of a metric that you can measure the impact of these moments, these high fives that are shared. So that's the first thing. It's something that we love doing at this point at Focus Lab. It's become a big part of the culture, and it's free. It's free. It's inexpensive, very inexpensive. It just takes some intention, some attention, and it helps your retention. There you go.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. I would say I have experienced what I'll call public displays of appreciation in a variety of ways through the years. I think it's really important, regardless of the size of your organization, to do this. I think when you're on a really small team, sometimes you can forget to acknowledge, all the work that's going on behind the scenes. And then when you have maybe a large team or a large organization, there are so many different pockets in the organization that someone in the marketing team has no idea what someone over in HR or operations might be up to. But then if they get to see that recognition in one of those weekly meetings, it helps make connections. It helps people appreciate the work that everybody is putting in, and also understand better who our teammates are. Because you can think small team, but hopefully in a healthy organization, you're also considering yourself a part of the bigger team, right? And how you all put in work to help one another out. So I love that. Well, I think it's important, especially when you're a manager or a leader, to take the opportunity to highlight members of your team who may otherwise be overlooked, or again, just kind of like lost in the weeds. People would not know what they're up to. I think it's brave when someone is open to sharing something that they consider a win from the week, because maybe not everybody is willing to step up to the plate to do that. One thing that I experienced in a past workplace was that we were all invited to each week celebrate anyone that we had worked with during that week for different wins and high fives, essentially. And it was, I won't deny it, there were times when if somebody mentioned me, you have that moment where you're like, oh, me, oh my goodness. It's so heartwarming, as cheesy as it sounds. It always gave me a boost and made me feel good. It was encouraging. And then of course I loved doing that for my coworkers as well. So having it set up where anyone in the organization can do that is a huge gift, I think. Okay, so the second way that we can show appreciation comes to one of my favorite things. I love celebrations. Like when it comes to birthdays, work anniversaries, I know that some people think these things, maybe even work anniversaries, can be like kind of on the cheesy side, but I think it depends on how you approach it and what you do to celebrate those moments. So I know that depending on the organization, let's say budget may be limited, right? So there are different ways you could approach this, but I think it comes down to acknowledging the moment. It doesn't so much have to do with what maybe the gift might be, if there is a gift or a card or something to that effect, but just taking the time to acknowledge, that it is somebody's birthday or that it is someone's work anniversary. Those moments can become a big thing. And people want to feel seen and celebrated at work. I love a good birthday. And so I actually like it when my birthday is on a weekday, because then like more people are going to celebrate with me. I'm a total sucker for birthdays. So I love it when birthdays are highlighted. I love to celebrate other people's birthdays. You're just giving people the chance to do that. It starts with things like sending a card in the mail would be so nice, right? That's a great, thoughtful thing to do. If your team uses Slack, then taking the opportunity to highlight in Slack when it's somebody's birthday or work anniversary, giving everyone an opportunity to chime in and celebrate is so fun. If you have the ability to send maybe a little more personal gift, I think that's great. One of my favorite things that a past organization I worked with, one of the things that they did was when you're in the onboarding process, right when you're first hired, they asked a long list, honestly, a long list of personal likes and preferences and things like that. But they made that information shareable and open to everybody in the organization. So let's say I have a friend at work and her birthday is coming up and I want to celebrate that and I want it to be personal. I can go to that list and I look at what her favorite candy might be, or flowers, or if she likes books or magazines or gift cards for all kinds of things. Just again, giving your team the opportunity to celebrate one another. I think that's just such a huge gift in and of itself. Okay, so we've shared 2 ideas that are team specific. So let's talk about clients for a minute. What's something that you like to do to show appreciation for clients in their business?
I have to give some credit to somebody who has helped me kind of rethink how to do gifting in general to people who are not in the organization. There is a really simple book called Giftology by John Ruhlin, and a very simple premise of this book is that when you give gifts in a corporate or business setting, the temptation is often to include something about your company in the gift to someone else. And he's basically saying that's just terrible. Don't do that. That makes the gift about you and not about them. So he talks about the simple example of if you put our brand, our logo on a gift that we're giving to a client, that's an example of how not to do this. Mm-hmm. He says completely bypass any temptation to include your own branding. Just think about that recipient. And it's not even just about that company. It should be about the person who is receiving something in most cases. He's got a number of stories and examples in his book, Giftology. But one of them that I'll use is something that I received. I think that would be a fun way to kind of talk about this as an example, because of how I can talk about how it felt to receive this gift. I was not a client when I received this, but I was a guest on a podcast. And the host, unbeknownst to me, the host had already designed this gift process in there. I had happily just shared my mailing address with them during this kind of interview prep process. And after the interview had happened, some days later, I received in the mail a gift. And it was wine bottles that had been cut in half. It was just the bottom portion of a wine bottle. They'd been smooth. The edges had been kind of smoothed. And our family's last name was etched on the glass. There were 4 of them, different kind of colors and shades, I guess, of glass. Had no expectation of receiving this. It was simply a thank you gift for being part of a podcast. But it was about me. It wasn't about him or his podcast brand or his business's brand. The podcast was part of his business. This is part of his business operation. The gift was about me. And that was even a reminder for me. I'd already come across John's book before, and it was just a nice way to experience this side of the gift, giving and receiving process. So thinking about giving a gift to a client as some form of appreciation, skip the temptation to make it about you if you're going to be working on this. Make it about your client. If it makes sense, make it about them as a person, as an individual. Other times, maybe it does make sense to make it about them corporately. So one example I can give is years ago with the brand agency that I mentioned earlier, Focus Lab. We used a platform called Dribble. It's a website where you could showcase work that you're designing and working in progress, showing work in progress. We really were benefiting from the services in the website that they created and provided. And we wanted some way to say thank you. This is not a traditional client project per se, but it was a business relationship, and we wanted to say thank you and share appreciation. what we did is we found their logo, we grabbed their logo from the internet, and we had it etched into a few things. We had a set of coasters made, some wooden coasters with their logo etched into the base of the coaster. We had a box made that the coasters went in. We branded the top of the box with their brand. And we, if I remember correctly, also found a way to gift them a drink that we knew they liked. I don't remember the details because it's been years, but the point is that none of those details were about us. We were trying to follow this kind of idea of make it all about the recipient. Our logo was nowhere on it. Our name was nowhere on it. I don't know if they remember that we did it, but I do. I'm very confident that they remember receiving it and that they felt genuine appreciation. We had a note included just to explain why we were so grateful and appreciative of that kind of partnership or the work that we were able to do because of what they had built. But it was all about them. It was all about them. So if you're going to give gifts of appreciation or notes of appreciation to clients, just make sure that you keep it as much about them as you can. There are going to be different levels of investment. This thing that we did was fairly custom. It was not inexpensive. If you read Giftology, you'll see story after story that have some pretty gnarly investments about showing appreciation to clients. But whatever the investment is you're making, just make sure that it's about that person, about that recipient, and not about you as a business or as an individual. That's the thing that comes to mind as we think about appreciating clients that we've worked with or business partners in some fashion.
I love that. That's such a great tip, and a really important one, I think, to make those personal connections and make it feel truly sincere. So I love that. Okay, well, that wraps up part one of how we can show appreciation in the workplace. Stay tuned for part two. In the meantime, feel free to comment and share ideas that you've come across in your own experiences, and we'll see you next time.